We continue our camp countdown with covering the Bears Linebackers next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
I'm going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're out there on YouTube, and also rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. What's going on, everybody? We're going to be breaking down the linebackers today as we continue our countdown to camp, previews of every single position. So we've gone through on the defensive side, safeties and corners, and today it's going to be linebackers. So as we always do, break down what has changed at that position. We'll talk about the starters. We'll talk about the backups. We'll talk about the people you haven't heard about. And then also, lastly, talk about the overs, unders that I set. And also, did we get better at the position? So without further ado, let's get right into this because we have to say a little we're going to bring up Jack Sandborn again. So it's going to be a while for us to talk about this man, the great Jack Sandborn. So if we look at the roster changes from last year, our starters, TJ Edwards, Tummaine Edmonds, and Jack Sandborn. Obviously, we know Sandborn no longer with the team. And I want to bring this up because it's still surprising that he was not brought back in because he was a restricted free agent, which means the Bears could just put like a 1 year, like $1 million essentially tenor on him and say, hey, we want you back. And if anyone matches it, then they can decide, hey, do we match it? Do we not match it? Kind of like what happened with Ryan Bates a couple of years ago where Ryan Poles wanted him and the Bills said, no, we're going to keep him. Now with Jack Sandborn, it does kind of show what Dennis Allen wants out of a linebacker. But also, too, I've been a big Jack Sandborn supporter, big Jack Sandborn fan, but we saw him take a big step back last season. And when we were watching the tape, you just saw it, where Sandborn coming out of Wisconsin was someone who was a very disciplined linebacker, knew where to be, played his role. But last season, we saw things a little bit differently, where he was kind of overextending, being in the wrong place against the run, and missing a lot of tackles. Now, in Wisconsin, he was missing a good handful of tackles. People cited the potential short arms, the slower, being a little bit slower too. And you really did see that catch up to him. He was playing a little bit too aggressively, and it bit him. Now, he's over with Matt Eberflus, and clearly, the Bears wanted something different at that Sam linebacker position, which we'll break down a little bit later. But as we look at the other players that were on this team last season in July, the only ones that are no longer with the team, Micah Baskerville and Paul Moala. Our standard backups, Carl Jones Jr., Amen Ogbongbemiga, and Noah Sewell, all still with the team going into 2025 or 2026 season. You got me. But then next, when we look at this year's, the big difference, I have Ruben Hippolyte penciled in as the starter at the Sam linebacker position. We'll break it down when we get into him a little bit more. But I think that he fits what Dennis Allen wants out of that position rather than Noah Sewell, who probably fits more of the what the Matt Eberflus defense wanted more out of that Sam linebacker position. Because it seemed like they wanted someone bigger that can just kind of smash their face in with whoever's in front of them. Ruben Hippolyte has a different build, different body type that I think plays more into that than Sewell. And then also some additional add-ins. Swayze Bozeman as the third string weak side linebacker, and Power Eccles, the undrafted rookie free agent out of North Carolina, which we'll talk a little bit later on about. And also I put question marks around this guy, Daniel Hardy, the former defensive end, and everything that we're hearing is that he's getting a lot more snaps at the linebacker position than the actual defensive end. So I put a little question marks around him just to see, because Daniel Hardy is lighter. He is around 240 pounds, which for a Dennis Allen defensive end is very, very, very light. So it makes sense to say, hey, let's shift you over to a linebacker and see how well you fare around at that position. So let's get right into the actual linebacker position and start talking about the starting lineup, starting with Tummaine Edmonds. So we all know Tummaine Edmonds was our big free agent signing, 2 years ago? And now I think that we're starting to kind of be like, okay, how can we get out of this deal? Because it's not like he's been awful for the Chicago Bears. He's been relatively healthy, having more than 850 snaps over the past 2 seasons. But when you look at the grades as well, right? Yet again, PFF grades is just one of the elements. He's always been subpar, less than 60 grades in the past 2 seasons with the Bears. Yet again, has never surpassed a 60 grade from the PFF grading standards until it was 2022, his one season with the Bills, where he just dominated, having an 81.9 grade and was amazing in coverage. Now, he's played well. 2 seasons ago, had 4 interceptions and played well. But we kind of saw this last season where he over pursues. Yet again, talking about the over pursuit angles is something that was really bad with this team. And that's a big reason why this run defense was not great. Tummaine Edmonds, too, he gets pushed back a lot when we were grinding the tape. Even though he's this crazy athletic human, he was getting pushed back a lot. And that's still my biggest question is him in run defense. He's big, so he can kind of take up space in the middle. But let's see how he plays in this Dennis Allen scheme, where Dennis Allen has gotten a lot out of his linebackers. And I think that this year is going to be very telling for both Tummaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, because can they get something out of Edmonds? If they can't, I could see them getting rid of him because now they have an out. A lot of the guaranteed money is no longer going to be there. So to me, this is a put up or shut up time for Tummaine Edmonds, someone who's making a lot of money on this team. And next year, that whole free agent pool of money that we had before is starting to run dry. And you could see Ryan Poles maybe trying to swap someone else out. Maybe Dennis Allen doesn't think that he's a good fit for a system. He wants someone new. Big question marks with Tummaine Edmonds, and it's going to be a big, big year for him. Now, he still had over 100 tackles last season, which is fantastic, which is great. PFF charted him with less just because, or technically over. PFF has their own grades on certain tackles. They don't do a lot of the half or a lot of the assisted as much as some other sites. But yeah, they're charting him with a total of 76 tackles and 30 assisted tackles and 10 missed tackles. So giving him an 8.6 missed tackle percentage. So not bad at all for your linebacker. But yet again, they didn't necessarily love him in coverage or anything like that. So put up or shut up time for Tummaine Edmonds. So question for those watching out on YouTube, are we going to cut him? Not today, not during the season, but is he someone that this is his last season? Personally, it feels like it's going that way, the way that a lot of these contracts are going. I'd love to see a bounce back year. Obviously, you can see the potential and you understand the potential with them, but yet again, it's just potential. But with him too, he's 27 years old, so still very, very young. You can still get a lot out of him. So new coach, let's see what they can pull out of Tummaine Edmonds. But next, we have TJ Edwards. TJ Edwards, a little difference in age. He's 28. He's going to be 29 in just a month. So getting up there, but yet again, just re-signed. TJ Edwards just re-signed with the Bears, has that longer extension, but someone that is very good. I really like TJ Edwards, not just because he's a Wisconsin Badger, but I do really like TJ Edwards because of just, he's a solid player. And this is what we said when we got him. We got him for a cheap deal, and he was someone that has always performed well. When he was at Philly, always performed very, very well. And you even the grades as well echo that as well, always being around the whole 80 grade. Last year was not his best year. PFF actually has him as one of his worst years, giving him a 60.7 grade. And the year before that, 79.6. But we really did see that. We did not see him as much of a difference maker. He had a whopping 4 interceptions in 2023, 3 interceptions in 2023, which is absolutely outstanding. And he seemed to be making a lot of big plays as well. They gave him 6 quarterback hits in 2023, 4 quarterback hurries. And then last season, PFF charts him with 4 sacks. He was someone that was very productive when being sent on the blitz. So still not a bad season by any stretch of the imagination for TJ Edwards, but just something that we weren't typically seeing. We've seen better play out of him. So hopefully we can see a bounce back season with him. Because it's kind of that regression, the regressing to the mean, kind of getting back to that average. With TJ Edwards, you should expect better play out of him because he's typically shown you better play as a player. A lot of this can be just the whole Matt Eberflus doubting and everything like that. So hopefully he can kind of get back up. And I don't think it's a stretch to say you can expect a better season out of TJ Edwards. So that's my take on it as well. That we can see a better season. And some of you might be thinking, well, Brad, it's unfair. Why is it, like, if you're just basing it off of grades, TJ Edwards and Tummaine Edmonds, similar grades, but I'm hating on Tummaine Edmonds versus TJ Edwards, right? Someone might be out there thinking that. The big reason is because of money, right? TJ Edwards is like, his contract is 1/3 of Tummaine Edmonds' deal, and you're getting better play out of your cheaper option. That's why the heat is so high on Tummaine Edmonds versus a TJ Edwards, just in case if anyone was curious about that. That's why you go, hey, if I'm only giving you $6, $7, $8 million and you're giving me this play, awesome. But if I'm giving you 18, like we're doing with Tummaine, that's when you start going, okay, I need to see more, right? If you're a senior level employee, you expect more production out of them than, say, a junior level employee. So it's just the dollar. It's the value of the dollar that's being spent out there. But speaking to someone that's, very cheap out there, it's Mr. Ruben Hippolyte. Now, Hyppolite has been kind of a meme almost among Bears fans, just the name. I got to say, the name is very, very memeable. But also, too, we all kind of were like, wait, what did we just do when we drafted him? We drafted him number 132 overall. And he was the mock draft database consensus big board. He was the consensus 361st prospect, linebacker number 30. So way down there on the big board, 5'11", 236. This guy, speedy. Now, the big thing that we've talked about with this position, and one of the things that I talked about when we drafted him, I saw Ruben Hippolyte get pushed off of a lot of blocks by larger linebackers, tight ends, other things like that. But the thing that I feel that they really like about him, and the thing that people are starting to see, is that speed that he has. That's all that people talk about. He's incredibly fast. I think he ran like in the 4.4s. Like, it was very, very speedy, very, very quick. And you see that as well. And that's why I was saying, hey, I could see him more as a will linebacker. But Dennis Allen was talking about his Sam linebackers, like this goes back into the whole discussion about Jack Sandborn versus Ruben Hippolyte, and also you can throw Noah Sewell into there. When you look at that position group, Dennis Allen wants them to be able to cover, and he's asking them to do more coverage snaps rather than just being a battering ram to try and absorb blocks like what we were trying to use Jack Sandborn for, and also a Noah Sewell for. So Ruben Hippolyte plays more of that coverage role. He has that upside because of his just natural speed. Now, hearing out of the OTAs and out of mini camps, you could hear people talking about Ruben Hippolyte looking a lot smoother in coverage. So with this, and just natural progression with Hippolyte in coverage, where he looked really bad at the beginning, but now you start to see the natural progression. This is someone too that when we were watching the Rutgers tape, he blew up Kyle Monungai in pass protection and did pretty well. And that's when we're like, wait a second, that's Hyppolite. And so against flying off the edge and hitting a running back, not bad. But needing him to kind of push around a offensive lineman, you didn't really see much of that from that perspective. But really just the speed. That's why I think that he's going to be the starter. If I had money on it, I'd put it on Hyppolite being the starter. It just feels like he's making good steps in the right direction. Got some praise from some of the coaches that he's making all the good steps that you want to see. So Ruben Hippolyte, I think he's a starter. I think that he's starter as in starting Sam. Now, Sam linebackers don't get a lot of snaps out there, so that's why you can kind of disguise him, but I think he's more that scheme fit. While if we flip over, and I actually do not have the stats on Noah Sewell, because Noah Sewell has not played much. So because of this, let's talk about some of the backups. And it's really this guy up here. Noah Sewell, to me, is the biggest talking point. He is someone that I was looking, like I said, I was looking and trying to pull up some stats. And I was going to put a little page together for the YouTube show, but I'm like, why? He's played I think he played 5 snaps last season, regular season snaps, and then he played 18 in the preseason. He's been banged up consistently, but it sounds like he's at least playing a little bit more this season. So that's at least good that he's out there in OTAs, out there in minicamp. But that injury history also plays into this regime saying, hey, if the last regime couldn't trust you to be healthy, why should I trust you with this as well? But with Noah Sewell too, Noah Sewell, the reason why a lot of people liked him coming out, why I still really liked the pick. He was a projected first-round talent at the linebacker position. Now, a big reason is the system he was playing in. He was asked to rush the passer a lot, and him being around 260 pounds, he is a beefy linebacker. He can attack and he can pass rush, and that's the thing that he really benefited from. It was downhill linebacker skills, which is something that a lot of new age linebackers coming out of college, a lot of them are this downhill rusher. And that's where it can be difficult to project linebackers. That's why whenever I scout out linebackers, usually my number one thing is, can you cover? Because if you can cover, then you can do everything else. And coverage is so important for this linebacker position because it's so difficult to do at the next level. Sewell, this is something that he has struggled with in the past. So that kind of adds into that whole Dennis Allen conversation of maybe someone that doesn't necessarily meet the criteria of a Dennis Allen Sam linebacker. Well, why don't they cut him right now? Well, because you have him on a rookie deal and you just kind of want to see what you have. But I think that the seat is hot, and coming into it, he was the starter. He was penciled in as the starting Sam linebacker. I think Hyppolite takes that. And I think too, when you look at the other backups that are out there, I think that some of them can push him out, like Carl Jones. He's a little bit speedier, a little bit leaner than Noah Sewell. Amen Ogbongbemiga is still going to be more of a special teamer, but can play some middle linebacker, weak side linebacker. And I think that's where you're going to have the question of who's going to be this backup linebacker. And this is still something that I think that there's a pretty big hole. We need some linebacker depth. And, the season before that, you kind of felt, it was still Noah Sewell, but I think we were kind of optimistic about what Noah Sewell could be. And if one of your main starters like Edmonds or Edwards were to go down, we're like, okay, well then we have Sandborn at least. Now we have a rookie that, was 360th consensus player. I'm curious if they would actually add someone. I know some people have talked about it. I just don't necessarily see that. Another piece too, Swayze Bozeman, who's the third string linebacker. Little bit about him. He was a UDFA in 2024, 6'3", 224 out of Southern Miss. So yet again, lighter weight might be someone that's a backup for that Sam linebacker position. He had 5 years at Southern Miss. The overall PFF grade kind of graded around average. Last season too, Bozeman was a Kansas City Chief and just played a very limited number of snaps towards the end of the season. So nothing we can really kind of talk about there, but can be someone that can push maybe a Carl Jones, maybe a Noah Sewell. Yet again, this is going to be about scheme fit, being quick, being able to play some pass coverage, which might play into Bozeman's favor over someone like a Sewell or a Carl Jones. And last but not least, too, like Daniel Hardy, like we said, we just have to see how this whole experimentation with him at linebacker plays out. And then last but not least, Power Echols. Yet again, another person on the all-name team that we'd love to see. Major Burns is up there. Power Echols is up there. So we have two amazing named players. From what I've seen with Power Echols, he's also someone that was more higher rated on the consensus big boards. So I don't mind this UDFA pickup. But he's 6'1", 225. So kind of in that, yet again, 220 range seems to be where they want some of these linebackers to be. But if you look at just his grades overall, over 70 last year and the season before that, 78.6 grade in 2023. So pretty darn good there. So the grades match up with saying that they kind of liked him. And the big thing too, his coverage grade, over 75 in the past 2 seasons. But again, they're going to be looking at that coverage as a big indicator for how exactly this person plays. And just from the little that I've watched with Power Eccles, it's nothing that like completely pops off the tape. The announcers love him just because of the name, just how we all love him because of the name. But I think that this linebacker competition is definitely open. It's up for grabs is really the big piece that I want to be talking about. And when we get into the preseason and we get into previewing, these are all names that can be switched up in this back end of the roster. It's really just, hey, Edwards and Edmonds, they're the starters. Besides that, everything else is up in the air. Everything else is, it's just going to be a battle. So I'm excited to see this linebacker position, though. It's going to be very, very intriguing. But next, I want to just kind of talk about some of these over-unders. Yet again, the over-unders are set specifically to the linebackers. So last year, we only had 2 interceptions. And it's crazy because I think there was 8 interceptions from the linebackers the season before that. They were turnover machines. They played great. And then, yet again, that's when everyone loved Matt Eberflus. And the Eberflus defense was doing great. And then all of a sudden, train goes off the rails. No one's making plays. For this, I'm going to say over, right? Especially because even though it's not a contract year for Edmonds, it will feel that way. Because if you don't produce at an $18 million a year deal level, you're going to be gone. Because we need to save money, spend it elsewhere. And that's a position that you can afford to say, hey, let's get a solid linebacker for $6 million like we did with TJ Edwards, because you can do that. The linebacker position has such a huge disparity. And the thing with Tummaine Edmonds, the reason why I know I was negative when they signed him, he's not been consistent. Edwards has been consistent. Edmonds, not so much. So I'm going to say that the interception number's over. Now, linebacker sacks 7.5. I should have seen how they deploy their linebackers typically. But I'm going to say I'm going to say under. I'm going to say under because 8 for our linebackers is pretty high. So I'm going to say under for that total for the linebackers as a whole. And yet again, if we're going to play them more in coverage, then that's where I'm going to say under. So under 7.5 is what I take there. Will we get 2 linebackers to have over 100 tackles? I'm going to say over as well. It happened last season too. So I'm going to say same thing. I'm going to say over for that as well. And Pro Bowls, will we get a Pro Bowler at the linebacker position? No. Linebackers, this is one of the spots that the NFL needs to come in and change this. For people that don't know the linebacker position, they lump in with it's just so difficult for them to get in because they have the outside linebacker position, which is where TJ Edwards plays, where he should have been a Pro Bowler 2 years ago, but wasn't because he's an outside linebacker. But the people that have all the sacks that play in the 3-4 system, they're the ones that get in. So hopefully they change it to stand-up linebackers. So like they get with the 21st century and, actually start to say like, hey, we have stand-up linebackers and then we have edge rushers, right? Just categorize it as edge rushers like everyone else does. So with this, the linebacker position, I'm going to say under just because it's very, very difficult to become a Pro Bowl linebacker. I'd love that to be over because it would probably mean that Tummaine Edmonds has an amazing season. So lots of, split with some of the overs and unders there. But last but not least, did we get better? And yet again, it's not just about the additions. It's also based on what I think is going to happen with the individuals. So going with the starters, like I said before, I think that TJ Edwards kind of gets back to his mean level of play. So I think that he's going to be looking better. Last year was a down year for him. I think with all the coaching stuff going on, it's reasonable to say that TJ Edwards, even though he's older, will be better, will perform better next season. So I'm going to say better there. Tummaine Edmonds, we've seen him do the same stuff, right? So he's kind of played at the same level. I think he should be able to play a little bit better. I'm hoping he plays a little bit better too, because we've also seen Dennis Allen get a lot out of these linebackers. So I'm going to say better as well there. But now we get down to the Sam linebacker spot. Even though that I said that, hey, you had Jack Sandborn and you got rid of him. If we had Jack Sandborn right now, how would we feel? well, we'd be like, okay, we feel a little bit better. There's some nervousness. You're starting someone like in Ruben Hippolyte that is an unknown. At least with Sandborn, you could say, hey, let's try to get you back to normal. Let's try to get you playing disciplined rather than undisciplined. It makes you feel a little bit better about that. This, I'd say, is negative because you have so much unknown. Noah Sewell, we have not seen the kid play at all. So to me, the Sam linebacker position is where, to me, you start to kind of lose me a little bit, right? Amen Ogbongbemiga, you should be able to see him play normal, right? I think that he's going to stay the same. Carl Jones, even though that he's younger, I don't expect any sort of like huge jump, right? If the Carl Jones hive is out there, let me know in the comments. I don't see him all of a sudden be like, holy crap, it's Carl Jones, right? I could see him be like, oh man, you're a backup. Awesome. But yet again, the depth is something that is very, very lacking with this. And Noah Sewell, I don't necessarily think he's going to have this big jump because, yet again, I don't think that he's necessarily what Dennis Allen wants in that Sam linebacker position. And that's why you're seeing Daniel Hardy and other people try to come in. Now, you look at like a Swayze Bozeman versus Micah Baskerville or Paul Mowala, right? I think that's all a wash. I think that Bozeman's kind of a little bit better. But really with this linebacker depth chart, did we get better or did we get worse? This is where I don't like these exercises sometimes too, even though I literally do it to myself because if I don't want to do them, I just flat out don't do them. But I like doing it because it is an interesting exercise because we lost someone like a Jack Sandborn, because we lost someone that you kind of know what you're getting. And now you're going into the enigma of what could potentially happen. It feels like one of those break evens, like I've talked with some of the defensive backs. Since we're not really like losing a key cog in the system and you're banking on the natural progression of like a TJ Edwards back to the mean, it's hard for me to say that this is a improvement, right? When you're guessing on Hyppolite. And I know there's going to be a Hyppolite hive out there being like, hey, no, he's awesome, right? He was actually drafted. But it's just there's still a standard. So this is one of those where I always hate ending the show on this note, but I think that this is a little step down just because the lack of knowing what you have. That's why I'm going to say not knowing exactly what we have as a depth perspective is something that is scary to me going into this. While last season we felt much more comfortable at this spot going, okay, what do we have with Noah Sewell? What do we have with some of these other players? So to me, I'm going to say down. I'm going to say down a little bit. Don't hate me in the comments for it, but that's what I'm going to go with. And with that, let me know what you feel down below. Do you agree with me? And make sure to like and subscribe if you're out there on YouTube, but also download the show. Just search for Unbearable Sports everywhere that you get your podcast. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair and you know that she's a